The Alpha King had faced assassins, conquered rival packs, and survived wars that buried legends. But nothing prepared him for what he found inside an abandoned stable. A young woman lay asleep on the cold straw, as though the world itself had forgotten her. Standing over her was a massive pregnant wolf, one feared across the northern forests, a beast that killed any warrior who dared come near her den. Dozens of armed wolves surrounded the stable, yet none dared take another step, not because they feared the woman. They feared the wolf protecting her. The moment the Alpha King moved closer, every warrior reached for their weapons. They expected blood. Instead, the impossible happened. The pregnant wolf slowly lowered her head, not in surrender, but as if she recognized the Alpha long before he recognized the truth standing before him. At that very moment, the sleeping woman opened her eyes, and with that single glance, the fate of the Alpha King's kingdom began to change forever. The Alpha King had stood on battlefields where rivers had turned red beneath the feet of fallen warriors. He had watched kingdoms collapse before his command and heard enemies whisper his name with fear long before they ever saw his face. Nothing in this world had ever forced him to hesitate. Nothing had ever made his heartbeat slow with uncertainty. Until this morning. The old stable rested far beyond the edge of the village, where broken fences leaned against the wind and forgotten memories clung to weathered wood. It was a place where no one willingly walked. Even the horses had abandoned it seasons ago. Yet every warrior in the pack stood frozen outside its entrance. Their weapons remained ready, but none of them dared step forward. The silence surrounding the building felt heavier than any battlefield the Alpha had ever crossed. One of the older warriors lowered his voice and warned that something inside was not natural. 3 scouts had entered before sunrise. None of them had returned. The only sound that escaped afterward was the deep growl of a wolf, unlike anything they had ever seen. The Alpha King looked at the faces around him. These were seasoned fighters who had survived countless hunts and brutal wars. Men who would challenge bears without fear now refused to move another step. Their eyes carried something he had not witnessed in years: pure fear. Without another word, he walked toward the stable alone. The wooden door stood slightly open as cold air drifted through the narrow gap. Every step echoed against the dry earth beneath his boots. Dust floated through the pale morning light like tiny ghosts refusing to leave the forgotten place. His sharp eyes searched every dark corner, yet the silence remained untouched. Then he saw her. A young woman slept peacefully on a bed of old straw, as though the harsh world beyond those walls did not exist. Her face looked pale from exhaustion. Strands of dark hair rested across her cheeks, while one hand remained gently folded beneath her head. She showed no fear, no awareness. It was almost impossible to believe anyone could sleep so deeply while danger surrounded her. Beside her stood the wolf. She was enormous, larger than any wolf recorded in the history of the kingdom. Thick silver fur covered her powerful body, while countless scars stretched across her shoulders as proof of battles already survived. Yet it was not her size that stole the Alpha King's attention, her swollen belly. She was carrying unborn pups. The wolf never growled. She never bared her teeth. She simply stood over the sleeping woman with quiet determination. Every breath she took seemed calm, yet ready. Every movement carried the promise that anyone foolish enough to threaten the girl would never leave this place alive. For several long moments, neither of them moved. The Alpha King slowly lowered his hand away from the sword resting at his side. He understood wolves better than most men. Fear invited violence. Respect created possibilities. Outside the stable, nervous whispers continued to spread. Some believed the woman was a witch who had enchanted the beast. Others claimed she carried an ancient curse that had returned after generations of silence. The younger warriors begged their king to burn the stable before whatever lived inside escaped into the kingdom. None of them understood what they were truly seeing. The Alpha King took one careful step closer. The wolf lifted her head. Every muscle inside her powerful body tightened. Outside, dozens of warriors instantly raised their weapons, expecting their king to be attacked. Instead, something impossible happened. The wolf looked directly into the Alpha King's eyes. Not with hatred, not with fear, with recognition. It lasted only a heartbeat. Yet it carried a weight that settled deep inside his soul. He had never seen this animal before. He was certain of it. Yet those ancient golden eyes watched him as though they remembered a promise made long ago. A cold breeze slipped through the broken walls, carrying the scent of pine and rain across the stable floor. The Alpha King felt the air itself change around him. His instincts warned him that this moment was larger than politics or territory. Something hidden beneath years of forgotten history had quietly awakened. Behind him, footsteps approached. Members of his council finally gathered outside the entrance. Their expressions held no concern for the sleeping stranger. Their eyes remained fixed upon their king. Some already questioned why he had not ordered the wolf killed. Others quietly exchanged suspicious glances, believing mercy had made their ruler weak. The Alpha King noticed every look. He heard every whisper carried by the wind. Years of leading had taught him that betrayal never announced itself with loud voices. It began exactly like this, with doubt, with silence, with people waiting for a single mistake. His gaze returned to the sleeping woman. Her clothes were torn from a journey that must have lasted many days. Dust covered her hands while faint bruises marked her arms. Whoever she was, she had suffered before reaching this forgotten place. Yet somehow the deadliest wolf in the forest had chosen to protect her instead of abandoning her. Nothing about it made sense. That frightened him more than any enemy ever could. The kingdom stood balanced upon invisible cracks. One wrong decision would give ambitious leaders every excuse they needed to challenge his rule. One act of compassion could be twisted into weakness. One mistake could begin a war inside his own pack. As the morning light slowly reached the woman's face, her fingers moved ever so slightly against the straw. The Alpha King did not breathe. Because somewhere deep inside his heart, he knew that the moment she opened her eyes, nothing inside his kingdom would ever remain the same. The woman opened her eyes with the slow calm of someone waking from a peaceful dream instead of a nightmare. Light slipped through the broken roof and settled across her face. For one quiet moment, she simply stared at the wooden ceiling above her. There was no panic inside her eyes, no confusion, no desperate search for danger. She looked strangely peaceful, as though she had expected to wake exactly here. The Alpha King did not move. Neither did the wolf. The silence between them stretched across the stable until even the wind seemed unwilling to interrupt it. Then the woman slowly turned her head. Her eyes met the Alpha King's. Time itself appeared to stop. He had faced kings who ruled with iron fists. He had stood before enemies whose hatred could shake mountains. Yet there was something inside this young woman's gaze that reached deeper than fear. It was not strength. It was not weakness. It was sadness. A sadness so old and so quiet that it seemed woven into her very soul. She slowly pushed herself upright. Every movement revealed the exhaustion hidden beneath her calm face. Her clothes were torn by branches and stained with dried mud. Small cuts covered her hands. Long days of travel had stolen her strength, yet somehow they had failed to break her spirit. The pregnant wolf stepped closer until her body rested beside the woman like an unshakable shield. The Alpha King finally spoke. "Who are you?" His voice carried authority, but not anger. The woman looked at him for a long moment before lowering her eyes. "I do not know anymore." Those simple words settled heavily inside the stable. Outside the entrance, the council members exchanged uneasy glances. Some frowned with suspicion. Others quietly reached for the weapons hanging at their sides. One commander stepped forward. "My king, this is deception. She refuses to answer because she hides something." The Alpha King lifted one hand. Silence returned instantly. His eyes never left the woman. "Where did you come from?" She closed her eyes as though searching through memories buried beneath pain. "I remember running. I remember fire. I remember people screaming. After that, there is only darkness." Her voice remained steady, yet every word carried the weight of unbearable loss. The Alpha King noticed something strange. She never once looked afraid of him. Every stranger who entered his presence lowered their eyes or trembled beneath his reputation. Even rival leaders struggled to hide their fear. This woman did neither. She looked at him like a man instead of a king. The realization unsettled him far more than he cared to admit. Outside the stable, whispers spread through the gathered warriors. Some claimed she had cast a spell upon the Alpha. Others insisted she must be captured before sunset. One elder quietly muttered that forgotten prophecies often returned wearing innocent faces. The Alpha King heard every word. None escaped him. Years of ruling had sharpened his senses beyond ordinary men. He could hear fear hidden beneath loyalty. He could hear ambition disguised as concern. The council was no longer discussing the woman. They were judging him. His next decision would shape how the kingdom viewed its ruler. The pregnant wolf suddenly lifted her nose toward the open doorway. A deep warning growl rolled through the stable. Every warrior outside instantly stepped backward. The Alpha King slowly turned. Far beyond the fields, several black birds circled above the forest. They moved together in perfect silence. Watching. Waiting. The old hunter standing near the entrance quietly swallowed. Those birds have followed battlefields for generations. They never gather unless death is close. The words drifted across the cold morning air. No one answered. The Alpha King's thoughts moved quickly. Too many strange events had happened within a single morning. A forgotten stable, a sleeping stranger, a pregnant wolf willing to protect a human. Now the forest itself seemed to be watching. Nothing about this felt accidental. He looked back toward the woman. "What is your name?" She hesitated. "My mother called me Lyra." It was the first thing she had spoken with certainty. The Alpha King repeated the name silently inside his mind. It felt familiar, though he could not understand why. One of the oldest council members suddenly stiffened. His weathered face lost all color. That name. He whispered it so quietly only those nearest could hear. The Alpha noticed immediately. "You know it." The old man quickly lowered his head. "No, my king. Only an old memory. Nothing more." The answer came too quickly, too carefully. The Alpha King recognized a lie the moment it left another man's lips. He said nothing. Not yet. Instead, he watched the elder retreat into the crowd while avoiding every pair of eyes around him. The Alpha stored the moment inside his memory. There would be time for answers later. For now, another question demanded attention. The wolf. She remained beside Lyra without blinking. Her breathing had become heavier from the weight of the unborn pups she carried. Yet despite her condition, she never abandoned her position. The Alpha slowly crouched several steps away. "Easy, girl. No one will harm you." The wolf studied him with ancient golden eyes. Then something remarkable happened. She stepped aside. Only a single step, just enough to allow the Alpha King a clearer view of Lyra. Gasps escaped from the warriors outside. No one had expected such trust. Even the Alpha felt surprise settle inside his chest. Wild wolves did not offer trust. They earned survival through suspicion. Yet this one had chosen differently. Why? The question echoed endlessly inside his thoughts. Before he could speak again, a young scout came running across the field. His breathing was ragged. His face was pale. He dropped to one knee before the Alpha. "My king." "We found the tracks." The Alpha stood. "What tracks?" The scout struggled to catch his breath. An entire group crossed the northern border during the night. They were searching for someone. "The tracks lead straight to this stable." Silence crushed every soul standing there. The Alpha slowly turned toward Lyra. She lowered her eyes. For the first time since waking, fear finally appeared upon her face. Not fear of the Alpha. Fear of whoever was coming for her. And in that single terrifying moment, the Alpha King understood one thing with absolute certainty. The greatest danger had not been waiting inside the stable. It was already on its way. The Alpha King felt the weight of the scout's words settle over the stable like a gathering storm. Someone had crossed the northern border under the cover of darkness. They had not wandered into his lands by accident. They had followed a trail with purpose. Every footprint led to this forgotten stable. Every step pointed toward the young woman standing beside the pregnant wolf. No one spoke. Even the restless wind seemed to disappear. Lyra lowered her eyes as if she had already expected this moment to arrive. The calm that had surrounded her since waking slowly faded. Her breathing became uneven. Her hands trembled before she quietly folded them together to hide the fear. The Alpha King watched every small movement. Fear revealed truths that words often concealed. He stepped closer, but kept enough distance to avoid frightening the wolf. The great silver guardian never took her eyes off him. Her ears remained raised. Every muscle beneath her thick coat stayed ready to protect the woman beside her. The Alpha spoke with steady calm. "How many are coming?" The scout swallowed before answering. "We counted at least 20 warriors. Their tracks are fresh. They travel without banners. They move like hunters who do not wish to be seen." The warriors standing outside the stable exchanged uneasy looks. 20 skilled fighters entering Alpha territory without warning meant only one thing. This was not diplomacy. It was a mission. The council members quickly surrounded their king. One of them bowed his head. "My king, we should leave this place at once. Whatever danger follows her is not our concern. We must protect the throne before anything else." Another elder agreed without hesitation. "Give the woman to those searching for her, and this problem disappears before sunset." Several warriors nodded. The Alpha King remained silent. Their advice sounded practical. Their fear sounded louder. His eyes drifted toward Lyra. She stood completely still. She never begged for protection. She never pleaded for mercy. She simply waited for his decision with quiet dignity. There was no anger inside her face, only acceptance, as though the world had disappointed her too many times for hope to survive. Something about that silence disturbed him. People who expected kindness usually asked for help. People who had never known kindness expected nothing. The Alpha slowly turned toward his council. "No one leaves." The words fell like stone. Several faces hardened immediately. One commander stepped forward, unable to hide his frustration. "My king, this stranger has already brought danger inside our borders. Why should our people risk their lives for someone we know nothing about?" The Alpha looked directly into his eyes. "Because those who enter my land seeking blood will answer to me before they answer to anyone else." The commander's mouth closed. No one challenged him again. Outside the stable, fresh orders spread across the village. Warriors rushed toward the northern hills. Archers climbed the wooden watchtowers. Messengers carried warnings from house to house as families hurried indoors. The peaceful morning vanished beneath the sound of preparation. Within minutes, the entire territory stood ready for battle. Yet the Alpha King remained inside the stable. His attention never left Lyra. "You remembered your name? Can you remember who hunts you?" She closed her eyes. For several moments, nothing happened. Then she slowly pressed one hand against her forehead. "Shadows. I remember shadows. Men wearing dark cloaks. Fire behind them. Someone kept telling me to run." Her breathing became heavier. "I remember falling into a river. After that, everything disappeared. The memory ended as quickly as it had appeared." Tears formed inside her eyes, though she quickly wiped them away before they could fall. The Alpha noticed something else. Every time she remembered another piece of her past, the wolf moved closer to her side as though sensing the pain before anyone else could. That was no ordinary bond. It reached beyond instinct. It reached beyond nature itself. The Alpha walked slowly toward the stable entrance. His sharp eyes scanned the forest stretching across the distant hills. Everything appeared peaceful. Too peaceful. Birds had stopped singing. The leaves barely moved. The woods looked alive yet strangely empty. His instincts tightened, predators often waited for silence before they struck. Behind him, the old council elder continued staring at Lyra. His weathered face had grown pale again. The Alpha noticed. "You recognize her name." The elder hesitated. "Only from an old story, my king. Nothing more. Tell me the story." The old man slowly lowered his head. "Long before your reign, there were whispers of a forgotten bloodline. Children said to carry the blessing of wolves. Stories claimed the beasts protected them without command. Most believed the tales died generations ago." His eyes drifted toward the silver wolf. Perhaps they did not. The stable fell silent once more. The Alpha felt countless thoughts racing through his mind. Ancient bloodlines, forgotten legends, a mysterious woman guarded by a pregnant wolf, unknown hunters crossing his borders. Each answer created another question. Before he could speak again, one of the watchmen shouted from the hill above the village, "Riders." Everyone rushed outside. Far across the northern road, dark figures appeared between the trees. They rode black horses without pack markings. No banners flew above them. No colors revealed their allegiance. Their leader stopped upon the highest ridge overlooking the village. Even from that distance, his gaze remained fixed upon the old stable. The Alpha King felt it immediately. Those men had not searched randomly. They knew exactly where to look. A cold breeze swept across the valley. The silver wolf stepped out beside Lyra. Her head lifted toward the distant riders. Then she released a deep, haunting howl that rolled across the hills like thunder before rain. The sound echoed through every corner of the kingdom. Every wolf within the forest answered her call. One voice became 10. 10 became 50. Soon the mountains themselves seemed alive with howls rising from every direction. The mysterious riders did not retreat. Instead, their leader slowly smiled. He raised one hand toward the stable. Then every rider began moving forward together. Not with haste, not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of men who believed they had already won. And for the first time in many years, the Alpha King realized that this battle had begun long before he ever stepped inside that forgotten stable. The Alpha King never looked away from the riders descending the northern ridge. They moved with perfect discipline. Their horses never broke formation. Their pace never changed. They carried no flags and no symbols, yet their silence spoke louder than any army marching beneath royal banners. These were not ordinary soldiers. They had crossed dangerous lands with one purpose, and that purpose now stood inside the forgotten stable. Behind him, the village had transformed. Children disappeared into their homes. Heavy gates closed with deep echoes that rolled across the streets. Archers filled every tower. Warriors formed defensive lines across the main road with shields raised and spears planted firmly into the ground. No one panicked. The Alpha had trained his people too well for fear to become chaos. Yet beneath their discipline, another feeling quietly spread. Uncertainty. No one understood why strangers would risk entering Alpha territory without demanding tribute or announcing war. Their eyes kept drifting toward Lyra. She stood beside the silver wolf while watching the approaching riders. Her face had become pale once again. Fragments of memory flashed through her mind like distant lightning. She could not fully see them. She could only feel the pain they carried. The Alpha stepped beside her. "Do you know them?" She stared toward the riders without blinking. "I know the feeling they leave inside me. It feels like the night I lost everything." Her voice almost disappeared before the last word escaped her lips. The Alpha studied her face. She was not pretending. Whatever those men had done had broken something deep inside her long before she reached his lands. The silver wolf suddenly pressed her head gently against Lyra. The simple movement calmed her breathing. It was as though the great animal carried away part of her fear without needing words. The Alpha noticed something remarkable. The unborn pups inside the wolf stirred beneath her thick fur. The wolf lowered her eyes for a brief moment, then looked toward the forest again, almost as if even the next generation sensed danger approaching. One young warrior walked toward the Alpha with visible hesitation. "My king. Permission to speak freely." The Alpha nodded. The warrior took a slow breath. Many among the pack believe these strangers will leave if we surrender the woman. Some fear this battle is not ours. The Alpha remained silent. Those words hurt more than open rebellion, not because they challenged his authority, because they revealed how easily fear could replace honor. He looked across the gathered warriors. Every face searched his for certainty. A ruler earned loyalty most during moments when doubt filled every heart. The Alpha stepped onto a large stone before the village entrance. His voice carried across the silent crowd. A kingdom that trades an innocent life for temporary peace has already surrendered its future. No one moved. No one spoke. Every warrior continued watching him. He slowly continued. If these riders seek blood today, they will seek another tomorrow. If fear decides our justice, then none of us deserve the strength we claim to possess. The silence changed. It no longer felt uncertain. It felt ashamed. Several warriors lowered their heads. Others tightened their grip around their weapons. The Alpha stepped down from the stone. His decision had been made. There would be no surrender. Far across the valley, the riders finally reached the edge of the village. Their leader guided his horse several steps ahead of the others. His black cloak moved softly in the wind. His face remained hidden beneath a deep hood. He stopped just beyond bow range. Neither side raised a weapon. The silence between them became heavier than steel. Then the stranger slowly removed his hood. He looked older than the Alpha had expected. Silver hair rested across his shoulders. A long scar crossed one side of his face. His eyes carried neither anger nor kindness, only cold patience. His gaze ignored every warrior standing in formation. It settled directly upon Lyra. He smiled, not with happiness, with certainty. At last, we have found you. Lyra instinctively stepped backward. Her breathing became uneven. Another memory struck without warning. A burning house, a frightened child running through smoke, strong hands pulling her away, the same cold eyes watching from the darkness. She grabbed her head as the memories crashed together. The Alpha immediately stepped between her and the stranger. "Who are you?" The old rider answered without hesitation. "Someone finishing a promise made many years ago." The Alpha narrowed his eyes. "No one enters my lands and takes what stands under my protection." The stranger remained perfectly calm. "She does not belong to you. She belongs to history." His words drifted across the valley like winter air. Several council members exchanged worried looks. The old elder standing near the Alpha suddenly closed his eyes. His hands trembled. The Alpha noticed. "Again. You know something." The elder finally spoke with visible fear. "My king. If that man is who I believe he is, then this kingdom has awakened something buried long before your father was born. Before the Alpha could question him further?" The stranger slowly raised one hand. Every rider behind him stopped their horses at exactly the same moment. Perfect discipline. Perfect obedience. The Alpha recognized elite training when he saw it. These men had followed their leader for years, perhaps decades. The stranger looked toward the silver wolf, then toward Lyra, finally toward the Alpha. "You still have time. Give her to us and your people will live. Keep her and every life inside this valley becomes part of a war you cannot yet understand." The words settled across the village. Fear quietly returned to many faces. The Alpha never looked away. His answer came without hesitation. "Leave my land." The stranger gave a slow, disappointed nod. Then he turned his horse away. For one brief moment, relief spread through the village. It ended almost instantly, because the stranger lifted one hand toward the forest. The earth itself seemed to awaken. From every direction, shadows emerged between the trees. Not 20 riders. Not 50. Hundreds of silent warriors stepped out from the endless forest until the hills themselves appeared covered in black. The village had never been the true target. It had been completely surrounded before anyone realized the battle had already begun. Dark shapes covered the hills like a living shadow waiting for night to fall. Every ridge that had looked empty only moments before now carried silent warriors dressed in black. They stood without banners and without movement. Hundreds of eyes watched the Alpha King's village with cold patience. They had not rushed into battle because they believed victory already belonged to them. The wind carried the smell of rain across the valley. No bird sang, no leaf stirred, even nature seemed to hold its breath. The Alpha King slowly stepped forward until he stood alone before the entrance of his village. His warriors remained behind him in perfect formation. No one spoke. They understood what their king was doing. He was showing every enemy on those hills that no amount of numbers could force fear into the ruler of these lands. The old rider remained upon his horse with complete confidence. "You still have one chance," the Alpha answered with steady eyes. "You have already wasted yours." The old rider gave a slow nod as though expecting exactly that answer. Then he turned his horse and quietly disappeared back into the sea of black warriors. No command followed, no attack came. The army simply waited. That frightened the Alpha more than an immediate assault. Patient enemies were dangerous enemies. He returned inside the village where every face searched his for answers. The council gathered around him without delay. One commander spoke first. "My king, they outnumber us many times over. Even if we win today, we may lose half our people." Another elder looked toward Lyra before lowering his voice. "Perhaps there is still another way?" The Alpha looked directly into him. "Say it." The elder hesitated before speaking. "Give them the woman." Silence fell across the room. Several council members avoided looking at the Alpha. Others quietly nodded. They feared war more than shame. The Alpha felt disappointment settled deep inside his chest, not because they questioned him, because they had forgotten who they were. His voice remained calm. "When did our people begin measuring life by numbers instead of honor?" No one answered. The commander finally stepped forward again. "Honor cannot rebuild burned homes. Honor cannot return the dead." The Alpha slowly walked toward the window where he could see the dark army waiting beyond the hills. Fear speaks wisely when survival is all a man values, but fear has never built a kingdom. The room became silent once more. The council had no answer. Outside, the silver wolf suddenly released another long, haunting howl. The sound echoed through every mountain surrounding the valley. This time the answer came much closer. From deep inside the forest, wolves emerged one after another. Gray wolves, black wolves, white wolves, old wolves carrying scars, young wolves filled with strength. They stepped quietly from the trees until dozens surrounded the edge of the village. They did not threaten the people. They ignored them completely. Every wolf faced the hills where the enemy waited. The villagers watched in stunned silence. Never, in living memory, had wild wolves gathered peacefully beside humans. Children peeked through open windows with wide eyes. The oldest hunters slowly lowered their bows. They understood they were witnessing something beyond ordinary life. Lyra stepped toward the wolves. None growled. None backed away. One small wolf approached her first. Then another. Soon, an entire circle formed around her while the pregnant silver wolf remained beside her like their silent queen. The Alpha watched carefully. This was no accident. The stranger had spoken of history. The elder had spoken of forgotten bloodlines. Now the forest itself had chosen a side. The pieces slowly began fitting together. Lyra closed her eyes. The wind touched her face. A distant memory finally returned. She saw herself as a little girl standing beside a river beneath a bright summer sky. The same silver wolf stood nearby, though much younger then. Her mother smiled while placing both hands upon her shoulders. "Never fear them. They know your heart before you know your own." The memory vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Lyra opened her eyes filled with tears. "I remember." The Alpha immediately turned toward her. "What do you remember?" She struggled to breathe. "The wolves protected my family, for generations. We never ruled them. We lived beside them. The old council elder suddenly stepped forward. His face had become pale. The blood guardians. He whispered the ancient words almost to himself. The Alpha looked toward him. Explain. The elder slowly bowed his head. Long ago, before kingdoms divided these lands, there was one family chosen to protect the balance between man and wolf. Stories claimed both sides survived because of that bond. Then one night the entire bloodline disappeared. He looked toward Lyra, or so everyone believed. The Alpha remained silent. Everything was beginning to make sense. Not enough, but enough to understand why an army had crossed borders for one woman. She was not simply a survivor. She represented something much older, something powerful enough to change kingdoms. Before another word could be spoken, a horn echoed across the valley, once, then twice. Every enemy warrior upon the hills raised a torch. Hundreds of flames burst into life together. The valley glowed beneath orange light despite the afternoon sun. The Alpha narrowed his eyes. They were preparing for a siege, not an attack. A siege meant patience. It meant cutting off food, water, hope. The enemy intended to break the village without wasting soldiers. The commander looked toward the Alpha. My king, they mean to starve us. The Alpha remained completely calm. He had fought wars longer than many of these men had lived. He understood patience better than his enemies imagined. Gather every family inside the inner walls. Protect the wells. Store every grain. No one wastes a single arrow. The orders spread quickly. Within moments, the village moved with disciplined purpose. No screaming, no confusion, only preparation. The Alpha stood alone upon the wooden wall, watching hundreds of enemy fires slowly appear across the hills. Behind him, the wolves remained beside the village instead of returning to the forest. Ahead of him, an unseen war had only begun. Behind him, an ancient secret was finally waking from history. Then, far beyond the enemy lines, a single enormous wolf appeared upon the highest cliff. Its coat was pure white. Its eyes burned like gold beneath the setting sun. Every wolf around the village instantly lowered its head. Even the great silver wolf bowed in silence. The Alpha felt a chill run through his body, because he realized every creature in the valley had just acknowledged a leader far greater than himself. The great white wolf stood upon the highest cliff like a silent ruler watching over an ancient kingdom that no human had ever truly understood. The fading light of evening rested upon its snow-white fur until it seemed carved from moonlight instead of flesh. Every wolf surrounding the village remained bowed in complete silence. Not one dared lift its head before the guardian upon the mountain. The Alpha King felt something shift deep inside him. Power recognized power. It had nothing to do with crowns or armies. This was older than kingdoms. Beside him, Lyra slowly stepped toward the village wall. Her eyes remained fixed upon the distant white wolf. Tears quietly gathered without warning. She did not understand why her heart suddenly felt both heavy and peaceful at the same time. I know that feeling. She whispered the words almost to herself. The Alpha looked at her. What do you remember now? She closed her eyes for only a moment. When I was very young, my mother would wake before sunrise. She always walked toward the forest without fear. I was never allowed to follow. One morning I ignored her and watched from far away. I remember seeing a white shape standing between the trees. My mother bowed her head before it. I thought it was only a dream. She slowly opened her eyes again. It was never a dream. The old council elder lowered himself onto one knee. His voice trembled with emotion. The first guardian. The stories were true. Several younger warriors looked at him with confusion. The Alpha spoke without taking his eyes off the mountain. Tell us everything. The elder took a slow breath. The first guardian was never believed to be a single wolf. The old legends said every generation one ancient guardian would guide the balance between wolves and humans. No hunter could track it. No king could command it. It appeared only when the balance was close to breaking forever. His eyes shifted toward Lyra. If it has returned, then the danger before us is far greater than we imagined. Silence settled over the wall. The Alpha understood one truth. His enemy had not invaded simply to capture one woman. They feared what she represented. A loud horn suddenly echoed across the valley. Every eye turned toward the enemy camp. The hundreds of torches that had burned across the hills slowly separated into smaller groups. Instead of surrounding the village, the soldiers began moving deeper into the forest. The commander frowned. They are changing position. The Alpha watched carefully. No, they are searching. Searching for what? No one answered. Far inside the forest, frightened birds burst into the evening sky. Moments later, a deep roar rolled across the mountains. It was not the cry of a wolf. It sounded larger, older. The silver wolf immediately stood before Lyra. Every wolf surrounding the village raised its head toward the forest. The Alpha tightened his grip around the wooden wall. Whatever lived beyond those trees had awakened. The old elder quietly spoke. They are disturbing sacred ground. Before anyone could question him, another roar shook the valley. This time the ground itself seemed to tremble beneath their feet. The enemy soldiers stopped moving. Even from a distance, the Alpha could see confusion spreading through their ranks. Then screaming began. It started with one voice, then another. Within seconds, dozens of frightened cries echoed through the forest. The dark army broke formation. Torches scattered in every direction. Horses bolted wildly through the trees. No one inside the village understood what was happening. The Alpha narrowed his eyes. His enemies had entered the forest with confidence. Now they were running. The old rider appeared once more at the edge of the trees. His calm expression had disappeared for the first time. He shouted commands to his soldiers, but panic spread faster than discipline. Suddenly, one burning torch flew high into the air before disappearing into darkness. A heartbeat later, complete silence returned. No screams, no movement, nothing. The valley became unnaturally still. The Alpha had experienced enough battles to recognize dangerous silence. Something was coming. The white wolf upon the mountain slowly lifted its head. A long, powerful howl rolled across the land. Every wolf surrounding the village answered at once. The sound felt less like a warning and more like a command. Without hesitation, every wild wolf turned away from the village and disappeared into the forest together. The silver wolf remained. She looked toward Lyra, then toward the Alpha. Finally, she stepped away and followed the others into the darkness. Lyra instinctively reached after her. "Please, come back." The wolf never stopped. Within moments, she vanished beneath the trees. For the first time since arriving at the stable, Lyra stood completely alone. Tears slipped down her face. The Alpha stepped beside her. She left. His voice remained calm. "No." She answered softly. She answered the call. Those words lingered inside the evening air. The Alpha suddenly understood. The wolves had not abandoned them. They had gone to face whatever terror had awakened inside the forest. The commander hurried toward the wall. "My king, scouts have returned. They found abandoned enemy camps. Weapons are scattered everywhere. Many soldiers are missing." The Alpha looked toward the forest once more. Missing. Not dead. Not wounded. Gone. He disliked mysteries that left no tracks behind. Night slowly covered the valley. Small fires burned along the village walls. Families gathered, together inside their homes while warriors remained awake with bows in their hands. No one slept. The Alpha continued watching the endless darkness beyond the gates. Hours passed. Then, just before midnight, footsteps echoed through the quiet village. Every guard instantly raised a weapon. A lone figure walked out of the forest. It was the old rider. His black cloak was torn. His face was covered with dirt. He carried no sword. No horse followed behind him. He stopped several steps from the gate and slowly looked up at the Alpha King. For the first time since their meeting, the confidence inside his eyes was gone. Only urgency remained. He raised both empty hands. Then he spoke words no one expected to hear. "If you wish to save the woman, open the gates, because the enemy hunting her was never my army." The words spoken by the old rider settled over the village like a cold winter fog. Every warrior upon the walls tightened their grip around their weapons. Moments earlier, this man had stood at the head of an army that surrounded the valley. Now he stood alone beneath the gate with empty hands and fear written across his face. It was the first honest emotion the Alpha King had seen in him. No one moved. The night remained silent. Only the crackling fire upon the walls broke the stillness. The Alpha King looked down from the wooden gate with calm eyes that revealed nothing. "You crossed my border with an army. You threatened my people. Now you ask me to trust you. Why?" The old rider slowly lowered his head. "Because I was wrong." His voice had changed. The confidence that once carried every word had disappeared. It sounded heavier now. Older, like a man who had just watched certainty die before his own eyes. "We believed we could control what slept beneath the forest. Instead, we awakened it." A cold wind swept across the valley. Several guards exchanged nervous glances. The Alpha remained completely still. "Explain." The old rider lifted his eyes toward the Alpha. "For years we searched for the last blood guardian. We believed her blood could seal away an ancient force forever. Instead, our search became an obsession. We hunted every family connected to the old bloodline until none remained." His eyes slowly turned toward Lyra, or so we believed. Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken. Broken memories began returning with greater strength. She remembered running through endless trees while flames swallowed the night behind her. She remembered strong hands lifting her into a rushing river. She remembered her mother kneeling before strangers with tears in her eyes while begging them to spare her child. Then another memory appeared, her mother's face, covered in blood. The image struck like lightning. Lyra stumbled backward. The Alpha reached out and steadied her before she could fall. She closed her eyes as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "They killed her." The words barely escaped her lips. The old rider never denied it. He simply lowered his head further. "Yes." The village fell into complete silence. The Alpha slowly turned toward him. "You destroyed her family. You hunted a child. Now you ask for mercy." The old rider accepted every word without resistance. "I deserve none, but there is no time left for revenge. Something far worse has awakened." Far beyond the village, another deep roar rolled through the mountains. The ground trembled beneath every foot. This time the sound lasted longer. It felt alive, ancient, hungry. Even the bravest warriors felt unease creep into their hearts. The Alpha looked toward the dark forest. His instincts told him the rider spoke the truth. Whatever had scattered an entire army without battle was still moving. The old council elder slowly stepped beside the Alpha. "My king." The old legends warned that the balance between wolves and mankind was never protected from ordinary enemies. It existed to keep something imprisoned. The Alpha looked toward him. "What?" The elder swallowed. No story ever gave it a name, only a warning. If the blood guardian vanished, then the prison would weaken until one day it broke. The Alpha felt the pieces joining together. The hunt, the forgotten bloodline, the wolves gathering, the white guardian appearing after centuries. None of it was coincidence. Everything had begun because the balance had finally collapsed. Before another word could be spoken, a frightened cry echoed from the eastern watchtower. Movement. Every warrior rushed toward the wall. Far beyond the enemy camp, dark shapes moved between the trees. Not soldiers, not wolves. They walked strangely, slowly, like shadows learning how to wear human bodies. The moonlight touched them only for brief moments before they disappeared again beneath the forest canopy. No one could count them. No one could understand what they were seeing. One young guard whispered, "They are not walking. They are floating." A chill passed through every soul upon the wall. The Alpha narrowed his eyes. He had fought monsters before. He had fought beasts that tore armored men apart, yet nothing had ever disturbed him like these silent figures, because they carried no rage, no urgency, only endless patience. The old rider stared toward the forest with visible horror. They have crossed the boundary. The Alpha looked at him. What happens if they reach the village? The rider answered honestly. No kingdom has ever survived. Those words struck the gathered warriors harder than any weapon. Fear spread once again. The Alpha saw it. He also saw something else. Every frightened face turned toward him. They were waiting, not for hope, for leadership. He stepped onto the wall where every warrior could see him beneath the pale moonlight. Listen carefully. His voice rolled across the village. Fear is already inside your hearts. Do not invite it into your hands. The men lifted their eyes. Tonight we do not fight for land. We fight for every child sleeping behind these walls. We fight for every family that believes this kingdom still stands, because we stand. His words spread through the silent streets. Slowly, shoulders straightened, grips tightened, eyes filled with purpose instead of panic. The Alpha continued. If darkness wishes to enter this valley, then it will first learn what it means to face wolves who refuse to kneel. A powerful howl suddenly echoed from the mountains. Then another. Then dozens more. The wolves were returning. One by one, glowing eyes appeared beyond the village. Gray wolves emerged first, then black wolves. Then the great silver wolf carrying fresh wounds across her side. She walked directly toward Lyra despite the blood covering her fur. She was exhausted, but she had returned. Behind her, hundreds of wolves silently formed a living wall beside the village defenses. The Alpha watched in quiet respect. Humans and wolves now stood together beneath the same moon. The White Guardian never appeared. Instead, another roar thundered from deep inside the forest. This one was much closer than before. The trees began shaking. Birds exploded into the night sky. Then the first towering shadow stepped beyond the tree line, and every warrior realized the true battle had only just begun. The towering shadow stepped beyond the trees with slow, deliberate movements that made the earth tremble beneath every stride. Moonlight touched its massive shape only for a heartbeat before darkness swallowed it again. No warrior could fully see its face. No hunter could recognize its form. It seemed less like a living creature, and more like a nightmare that had waited centuries for the right moment to return. Every bough upon the village wall was raised. Every spear pointed toward the forest. No one released a single arrow. The Alpha King held up one hand. His warriors trusted him without question. Silence became their greatest weapon. The enormous shadow stopped at the edge of the tree line. Behind it, more dark figures slowly appeared. They were not as large, but they moved with the same unnatural rhythm. Their empty eyes reflected the moon without life. Their bodies resembled men, yet every movement felt wrong, as though they had forgotten how humans were meant to walk. The old rider slowly stepped beside the Alpha. Do not waste your arrows. They do not fear pain. The Alpha never looked away from the approaching darkness. Then what do they fear? The old rider answered without hesitation. Only the Blood Guardian. Lyra heard those words and lowered her eyes. Fear tightened around her heart. I do not even understand what I am. How can I protect anyone? The Alpha turned toward her. You do not need to understand your destiny tonight. You only need the courage to face it. His voice carried no doubt, no hesitation. Those simple words settled inside Lyra like a quiet light pushing against years of fear. The silver wolf gently pressed her head against Lyra once again. Despite the fresh wounds covering her body, she remained standing with proud, unshaken strength. Blood stained her silver fur, yet her golden eyes still burned with fierce determination. Lyra slowly placed one trembling hand upon the wolf. The moment her fingers touched the thick fur, another memory burst into her mind. She saw a hidden valley surrounded by waterfalls. Children laughed while wolves ran freely beside them. No chains, no cages, no fear. Her mother stood before a circle of elders holding a newborn child wrapped in white cloth. An old woman smiled before placing her hand upon the infant. Protect the balance until your final breath. The vision disappeared. Lyra opened her eyes with tears quietly falling down her face. I remember our promise. The old council elder looked at her with wonder. The memories are returning. The Alpha noticed the change within her. She no longer looked like someone running from the past. She looked like someone finally walking toward it. A deep roar suddenly shattered the silence. The towering creature stepped forward. Its enormous foot crushed young trees beneath its weight. The ground shook so violently that dust drifted from the village walls. Several young warriors instinctively stepped backward. The Alpha drew his sword. The sound of steel leaving its sheath echoed across the silent valley. Every frightened eye turned toward him. He walked alone beyond the village gate. The commander rushed after him. My king. Please do not face that thing alone. The Alpha answered without slowing. A king who hides behind his people teaches them fear. A king who walks before them teaches courage. The commander stopped. He could not argue with truth. The Alpha continued, forward until only open ground separated him from the approaching darkness. Behind him, the wolves quietly spread across the field. They formed a wide line beside the village warriors. Neither species feared standing beside the other anymore. The old hatred between them had disappeared before a far greater enemy. The towering creature lowered its massive head. Its eyes slowly opened. They glowed with a dull, lifeless light. There was no anger inside them, only endless emptiness. The Alpha felt cold air wrap around him. His instincts screamed that this was no ordinary beast. It carried the weight of forgotten centuries. The creature suddenly lifted one enormous arm. Dark mist rolled across the ground toward the village. Wherever it passed, the grass turned gray. Flowers withered. Small trees bent as though life itself had been stolen from them. The old rider shouted from behind, "Do not let the mist reach the walls." Without waiting another heartbeat, the silver wolf leaped forward. Her powerful body crashed directly into the dark cloud. Instead of disappearing, she began glowing with a faint silver light. The mist slowed, then started fading. One by one, the other wolves joined her. Gray wolves, black wolves, white wolves. They stood shoulder to shoulder while soft light spread through their bodies. The darkness retreated. The Alpha looked toward Lyra. She understood without needing words. She stepped forward until she stood behind the wolves. She closed her eyes. A warm wind suddenly swept across the valley. The silver light surrounding the wolves grew brighter. It flowed toward Lyra like streams joining a river. The frightened villagers watched in complete silence. No one had ever witnessed such a sight. The Alpha slowly realized the truth. The wolves had never protected Lyra because she commanded them. They protected her because together they completed the ancient bond. The towering creature released another furious roar. For the first time it hesitated. It no longer advanced. The balance it believed destroyed had begun to return. The Alpha raised his sword high into the night. Every warrior answered with one united cry. The sound rolled across the valley with such force that even the enemy shadows paused. Hope returned, not as a fragile feeling, as undeniable strength. Then, from the highest mountain, the great white wolf finally appeared once more. It stood beneath the full moon watching the valley below. Slowly, it lifted its head. A single powerful howl echoed across the kingdom. The silver light surrounding Lyra became brighter than ever before. She opened her eyes. This time, they reflected the same golden light as every wolf standing beside her. And the Alpha King understood that the final battle would not decide only the fate of his kingdom. It would decide whether the ancient bond between humans and wolves would live forever or disappear with the coming dawn. The golden light surrounding Lyra spread across the valley like the first rays of dawn breaking through an endless night. It flowed gently through every wolf standing beside her until the battlefield no longer felt ruled by fear. The cold darkness that had swallowed the hills only moments before now struggled against a quiet force it could neither understand nor destroy. The Alpha King lowered his sword only for a moment, not because the battle was ending, because he finally understood what stood before him. Power had never belonged to one warrior, one king, or one bloodline. True strength was born when courage refused to abandon hope. The towering creature remained frozen beyond the fading mist. Its lifeless eyes stared at Lyra with silent hatred. The darkness surrounding its enormous body twisted like living smoke searching for another path toward the village. Then without, warning, the creature released a roar that shook the mountains. The ground cracked beneath its feet. Black mist burst outward once again. This time it did not crawl across the earth. It rose into the sky. Dark clouds swallowed the moon. The valley disappeared beneath unnatural night. Several young warriors tightened, their grip around their weapons as fear returned to their faces. The Alpha raised his voice. "Hold your ground. No one moves." The command spread through every line of defenders. Not a single warrior stepped back. The wolves remained beside them without hesitation. Human hands and wild instincts now guarded the same home. Lyra slowly lifted her face toward the dark sky. She could feel the ancient bond growing stronger with every heartbeat. The memories inside her mind no longer came as broken pieces. They flowed together like a river finally finding the sea. She remembered the hidden valley where children and wolves lived together without fear. She remembered elders teaching that strength without compassion would one day destroy itself. She remembered her mother placing both hands upon her shoulders before whispering the final lesson. Never fight darkness with hatred. Guide the lost back into the light. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. For years, she believed her family had been chosen because they possessed unusual power. Now she understood the truth. They had been chosen because they carried responsibility. The Alpha looked toward her. "You remember everything." She slowly nodded. "Almost everything. There is only one memory still hidden." The old council elder stepped closer. Sometimes the final memory appears only when the heart accepts what it fears most. Before Lyra could answer, another deep tremor rolled beneath the valley. The towering creature began moving again. Every step crushed stone beneath its weight. Darkness poured from its body like smoke escaping an endless fire. Behind it, the silent shadow figures continued advancing without emotion. The battle could no longer be delayed. The Alpha lifted his sword high above his head. "Archers. Ready." Hundreds of bows rose together. The wolves lowered themselves close to the earth, every muscle prepared. The creature crossed another stretch of open ground. Closer. Closer still. The Alpha never blinked. When the creature reached the center of the valley, he gave a single command. "Now." The night exploded. Thousands of arrows filled the sky before falling together like black rain. The shadow figures staggered beneath the impact. Many collapsed. Others continued walking as though pain meant nothing. The towering creature barely slowed. Its enormous arms swept across the air. A wave of darkness shattered dozens of arrows before they reached its body. The Alpha saw enough. Steel alone would never win. The wolves charged. Their powerful bodies crossed the field with breathtaking speed. Gray fur flashed through the darkness. White teeth struck the shadow figures before vanishing again. The battle became a storm of movement. Not chaos. Precision. The silver wolf led every charge despite the wounds across her body. She moved with fearless determination, protecting every opening before the enemy could exploit it. The Alpha joined the front line. His sword flashed beneath the fading moonlight. Every strike forced another shadow backward. His warriors followed without hesitation. The village stood united. No one fought alone. High above them, the great white wolf watched from the mountain without moving. Its golden eyes never left Lyra, as though waiting for one final choice only she could make. Lyra stood quietly in the center of the battlefield. The sounds of battle surrounded her, steel striking darkness, wolves howling beneath the storm, warriors shouting to protect one another. Yet inside her heart another sound slowly grew stronger. A heartbeat, not her own, older, gentler. It called her toward the center of the valley. She looked ahead, beyond the fighting, beyond the towering creature. A narrow path had opened through the darkness. No shadow crossed it, no mist touched it. The path seemed to glow beneath her feet. The old rider noticed first. He stepped beside the Alpha while watching Lyra walk forward. She remembers. The Alpha never looked away from her. "Remembers what?" the old rider answered softly. "The place where the first promise was made." The Alpha watched Lyra continue walking through the battlefield. Neither wolves nor shadows blocked her way. Everything seemed to part before her silent steps. The towering creature stopped advancing. For the first time, its empty eyes showed something different. Not anger, not hatred, fear. The Alpha tightened his grip around his sword. He realized the creature was no longer watching the army. It was watching only Lyra. Then she reached the center of the valley and slowly knelt upon the ancient ground. The earth beneath her hands began glowing with the same golden light shining inside her eyes. Deep beneath the battlefield, something ancient answered her touch. And the entire valley began to awaken. The moment Lyra placed both hands upon the ancient ground, the valley answered her with a heartbeat that echoed beneath every stone. Golden light spread through the earth in countless shining lines reaching toward every hill and every tree. The light moved like living water, carrying forgotten memories back into a land that had suffered beneath centuries of silence. Every warrior stopped fighting. Every wolf stood perfectly still. Even the towering creature froze where it stood. The Alpha King watched the battlefield transform before his eyes. The cracked earth beneath his feet slowly healed. Dead grass lifted once more beneath the gentle glow. Flowers hidden beneath years of dry soil pushed through the ground as though the valley itself had finally awakened from a long, painful sleep. Lyra closed her eyes. She no longer feared the memories. She welcomed them. The final peace returned at last. She saw her ancestors standing in this very valley many generations before. Men and women stood beside wolves beneath the same moon. There were no walls between them. No chains, no fear. Together they had made a promise that neither side would ever seek power over the other. They would protect life together and guard the darkness buried beneath the sacred land. Then she saw betrayal. Not from wolves, not from strangers. From humans blinded by ambition. They broke the sacred promise believing they could control the ancient darkness and use its power to rule every kingdom. Instead, they shattered the seal protecting the valley. Her family spent generations repairing what others had destroyed until only one guardian remained. Her. Lyra slowly opened her glowing eyes. "I remember everything." Her voice carried across the valley with quiet strength. The towering creature released one final roar. This time it rushed toward her with terrifying speed. The Alpha King moved without hesitation. He ran between Lyra and the creature with his sword raised high. Every warrior followed him. The wolves charged beside them without waiting for command. Steel met darkness. Claws struck shadows. The battlefield erupted one final time. The Alpha met the creature with every ounce of strength inside him. His sword crashed against its enormous arm. The force threw him backward across the ground. Pain shot through his body. Yet he rose before the dust had settled. He refused to fall. The creature attacked again, before it could strike the silver wolf. Leaped through the air and slammed into its side with fearless power. She had already suffered countless wounds, yet she fought as fiercely as she had inside the forgotten stable. The creature turned toward her in fury. The Alpha saw the opening. He drove forward once more, leading every warrior behind him. The battle no longer belonged to one king. It belonged to everyone protecting the promise that had almost been forgotten. Above them, the great white wolf finally descended from the mountain. It walked across the battlefield with calm, unshakable grace. No shadow dared approach its path. Every wolf lowered its head as it passed. The white guardian stopped beside Lyra. Their eyes met. No words were spoken. None were needed. Lyra understood. She slowly stood and placed one hand upon the white wolf. Golden light exploded across the valley, brighter than the rising sun. The darkness surrounding the towering creature began breaking apart. Not through violence, not through destruction, through truth. Every shadow that had covered the valley dissolved beneath the ancient light. The silent figures vanished one after another until nothing remained except drifting black dust carried away by the morning wind. The towering creature struggled to move, its enormous body cracked from head to foot. Golden light poured through every fracture, then the darkness shattered completely. Silence returned. Soft, peaceful. The first rays of sunrise appeared beyond the eastern mountains. Warm light touched the valley once again. The battle was over. The Alpha King slowly lowered his sword. His warriors remained standing, though many carried wounds earned protecting one another. No one celebrated immediately. They simply looked across the peaceful valley as though struggling to believe the nightmare had finally ended. The old rider walked forward with slow, careful steps. He stopped before Lyra. Tears filled his tired eyes. "I spent my life chasing power because I feared losing control. Today I learned that true strength was protecting what should never have been hunted." He knelt before her, then before the Alpha King. "Forgive me if you can." The Alpha looked at the man for a long moment. Justice had already found him long before this day. "Rise. Spend whatever years remain repairing what you helped destroy. That will be your punishment." The old rider quietly bowed his head. The villagers slowly stepped beyond their walls. Children laughed as wolves walked peacefully among them without fear. The silver wolf lay beneath a great oak tree, where her newborn pups finally entered the world, surrounded by both humans and wolves. Lyra smiled through tears as the tiny pups took their first breaths beneath the morning sun. The Alpha King watched the scene in silence. He had spent years believing fear created loyal kingdoms. Now he understood something greater. A ruler became truly powerful, not when others feared his strength, but when they trusted his heart. The old council members stood quietly behind him. None questioned his judgment anymore. None whispered about weakness. They had witnessed a king choose honor when surrender would have been easier. Because of that choice, the kingdom still stood. The great white wolf lifted its head toward the bright sky one final time. It released a calm, peaceful howl. Every wolf answered. The sound rolled across mountains and forests, carrying the ancient promise into a new generation. Then, the White Guardian turned and disappeared into the distant wilderness without looking back. The Alpha King stood beside Lyra as the morning sun covered the valley in golden light. The forgotten stable where this journey had begun still stood in the distance. Only now, it was no longer a place of mystery. It had become the place where a sleeping stranger awakened an ancient promise. Where a pregnant wolf reminded a kingdom what loyalty truly meant. And where an Alpha King discovered that the greatest throne was never built by fear alone, but by the courage to protect those who could not protect themselves. From that day forward, no enemy ever questioned his rule again, because his greatest victory had not been over darkness. It had been over the fear that once lived inside the hearts of men.